Today on Legally Yes, Prince Harry's protection denied after his car chase. Plus, Kroy and Kim's divorce battle rages on as Randall Emmett's documentary shines a shocking light into Bruce Willis's health. Plus, Teresa Giudice's husband Louis is sued. We've got that plus so much more on today's Legally Yes. Hey everybody, welcome to Legally Yes. I'm Christina. That's, of course, Nima Rahmani, President and CEO of West Coast Trial Lawyers. Hi, Nima. How are you?
Hi, Christina. Doing great. How about you?
Doing good. A lot of people had a lot of comments last week, especially about Prince Harry. It always gets a lot of people talking, so we wanted to check in and see what you guys had to say. Suki says, in my country, nobody is allowed to hire police. The reason being that said, police would have to be taken away from the job they are paid to do, which is to protect the British people. Strange that, isn't it? So is that pretty much maybe why they have denied? I mean, we'll dive into this a little bit more in a second, but is that another reason why they would have denied him? Because this is taking away from protecting all of the British people.
Well, definitely. Law enforcement, their job is to protect the public. So if something's for a private interest and not a public one, then there's a good argument that law enforcement shouldn't be diverted to protect some certain wealthy individuals.
Definitely. And then Karen says, Harry is fighting the Home Office hard as he and Meg want IPP, important protected person status, which means they are immune to being prosecuted by any country or give evidence in a court of law. It's not just all about security. So, Nima, is that right?
No, that's not right. Now, there is something called diplomatic immunity, but, the prince is no longer an official member of the royal family. And when he's asking for this protection, it's in his personal capacity as a private person. So obviously, we know, here in the United States, the Secret Service, for instance, they protect the president or a former president. You can't hire someone like that as a private person.
Got it. All right. So let's get into it a little bit more. Like we were just saying, his bid to hire the police security was denied. So the High Court judge in London ruled that he would not give the prince the option to hire his own police protection when he is overseas. As we know, Harry has stated that he feels unsafe while traveling there with his family. They argued in court that police officers are available for the public's best interest and not a private bodyguard for the wealthy. So this, of course, comes on the heels of his almost near catastrophic car chase in New York City after some highly aggressive photographers chased after them. So Harry and Meghan released a statement demanding that the photo agency Backgrid immediately provide them with photos, videos, film, anything that they could have provided for them. Well, Backgrid said, absolutely not. That's not how it works around here. So first going back to the security, are you surprised that he lost this bid?
I'm not surprised, Christina. There's a lot of demands here by, Harry and Meghan. I mean, you're no longer, at least the prince, acting in this capacity here. So, we talked about the law enforcement protection, police officers. Again, that's not something that you're entitled to as a private person. You can't say, well, I see police at a football game or a concert, and therefore I'm entitled to the same protection. Yeah. Again, that's for a public safety reason, not your own private tour of London. Right. And with respect to, photographs and video, you can't just demand something. Now, of course, if you file a lawsuit, you may be able to subpoena video documents, those types of things. But again, you are just an ordinary person living in Montecito with your wife. You can't make these demands. Maybe you got to start realizing, hey, now that you're in the United States, you need to start acting like a normal, albeit very wealthy person, but you're no longer a member of the British royalty.
No, definitely. So what are his options when he does go to the UK? I mean, he can hire his own private security, but again, I guess when you're in London, they don't have the same intelligence as the British police would have.
Of course. And you see this with celebrities all the time, right? When the Kardashians are traveling, they have a small army of private security guards. They don't have uniformed police officers. And, private security, some of them are former law enforcement. Some of them are former military. They can be very good. You can hire your own team. You can pay them whatever you want, but you can't make demands on public law enforcement officials.
Right. And now they are trying to make public demands on Backgrid, which is the photo agency, saying, you have to hand all this stuff over, which they've released a scathing response towards Prince Harry. But what was your reaction to that? And they really can't do that, right?
No, they can't. There's no legal justification whatsoever. I mean, they're really coming across as they're not children, but really spoiled adults who are making demands that have no legal justification whatsoever. You can't do that. Again, if you're involved in a lawsuit, if you're law enforcement, you execute a search warrant, there's certain ways you can't get things through the legal process, but you can't just make a demand and expect people to bend over backwards for you.
Right. When can Backred be forced to hand over any information if they ever, like if somebody got hurt or something like that? If Harry and Meghan end up suing them, would they be forced to hand over as evidence?
Yeah, potentially, yes. There has to be some sort of legal case, right? It can be a civil one, it can be a lawsuit, or it can be a criminal case. Under those circumstances, lawyers, not Prince Harry and Meghan, the lawyers, they would subpoena the documents, or if it's a criminal case, law enforcement can execute a search warrant in connection with prosecutors. But, an ordinary civilian, a non-lawyer can't make these demands. If there's some sort of case, yes, you can potentially get the information, but absent that, you cannot.
Right. Are you surprised that a lawyer is advising them to release statements like this? Because it seems, like you said, kind of silly that they would know that this is not how the law works.
Yeah, well, we saw this last week. Sometimes even my own clients make statements without talking to their lawyer. So, maybe, the prince and his wife should get some legal advice before, issuing these types of statements. And sometimes, and we've seen it before, I mean, we talked about different cases here, like when we're talking about Alec Baldwin. Sometimes you have the PR team that isn't really communicating with the legal team, right? So sometimes the PR folks put out statements for public relations reasons, but they don't necessarily pass legal muster. That may be what is happening here.
Yeah, it seems like everybody's got to get on the same page. Hopefully that happens for Kim and Kroy Biermann, because things are getting really, really nasty between the two of them. So he is requesting that his estranged wife undergo a psychological evaluation amid their contentious divorce. So on May 22nd, he requested, like I said, that she be psychologically tested as well as drug tested. And he further claimed that the reality star has presented very troubling behavior, which has accelerated in the months leading up to their divorce. And she is unable to properly care for the children. Well, she has allegedly been spending a substantial time and all their marital funds on gambling and other games of chance. And this compulsion has financially devastated the parties, which kind of makes sense, as we know, because their house was potentially up for foreclosure. So he said that she is consumed with online gambling. He's provided receipts, I guess, and he's pretty much, proof that of this alleged gambling. Well, this comes after she filed her own motion requesting that her estranged husband undergo a drug test, saying that she's worried about the children's care because she has seen him smoking marijuana in the home. Like I said, this is getting really nasty. So why would they both file something like this? Is this just kind of going tit for tat?
It may be, and we've seen this time and time again, Christina. These divorces get nasty, right? Obviously, the worst one was Johnny Depp and Amber Heard went to full-blown litigation. But, these types of cases, the spouses just want to inflict maximum pain on the other one and get custody of the kids, right? And sometimes there's money involved as well. So I'm not saying these allegations aren't true. They may well be, but you also have to take them with a grain of salt, because these are two people that are going after each other. That being said, when I was a prosecutor, my best sources of information usually were these former spouses. They know where the bodies are buried. They have all the dirt. So we're talking about two separate issues. First, of course, Kim's alleged gambling problem. Again, we don't know if that's true or not, but that could potentially be a serious issue. It's no different than drug or alcohol abuse. It's an addiction, and it can affect herself and the family financially. With respect to marijuana, it really depends on the state. So in a state like California, marijuana use alone isn't a sufficient basis for jurisdiction. What it means is it's not enough by itself to get your kids taken away from you. Now, of course, if you're driving under the influence or you're smoking it around the kids and they're inhaling, could be a problem, but it's generally not enough. So this is the type of thing that a court will really need to dig into, and a judge is going to say, hey, is there evidence supporting these allegations? Or if they're unfounded, I'm not going to do anything. But if there is, maybe I will order that psychological testing or drug testing, because it's really something only a judge can order, despite whatever demands are being made.
Right. Is there any chance that the kids, even though they are minors, that they would be called to witness in a case like this as well?
Potentially. When these allegations are made, that's when the social workers come and start interviewing the kids. So, you're talking about something that may affect the children. It's not just, spending your money. I mean, if you're spending money that really belongs to the kids, or you're using drugs around the kids may be affected. So social workers come, they interview the kids, and then they'll have to testify, both the social workers and the kids, potentially at a hearing, a family court hearing.
Easy. So sad. Well, hopefully they figure everything out. Well, a lot of people tuned in to Randall Emmett's bombshell Hulu documentary, The Randall Scandal. We talked a little bit about this last week about his relationship with his ex Lala, but some of the allegations in this documentary had to do with Bruce Willis and on their film Midnight in the Switchgrass. So Alicia Haberlin, she worked as a prop master on the movie, alleged that Randall knew more than he let on about his declining ability to remember his lines. Bruce Willis, in March of 2022, was diagnosed with aphasia. So he had memory loss. So she said, as the day progressed, you could tell that he was getting tired and would start to clip the lines. She later said, I started to realize it wasn't clipping. I started to realize that what he was doing was actually forgetting what was being said to him. She also alleged that Randall didn't realize that Bruce didn't realize he was filming a movie and instead thought he was in a real diner having coffee. She claimed Randall gets up and he slams the script down and said, "What the F? Can't we just get it done?" Everyone was just real quiet. Randall turns around and walks away and Bruce looks at it, I believe our DP at the time, and goes, "Did I do something wrong?" And we're just like, no, of course not. So obviously, maybe he wasn't aware of how severe his diagnosis was, but can the Willis family possibly sue him for pushing him to work when he was clearly not able to?
Possibly, Christina. And I mean, these are some very serious allegations. I'm actually going to be on Sheena's podcast with Lala next week. I'm going to make sure to ask her about these because, look, obviously Lala and Randall, they're getting a divorce, right? So just like we talked about, sometimes, you kind of take these allegations with a grain of salt. But when it's multiple witness after witness who's coming forward alleging the same thing, then you might say, hey, there's some truth here. And of course, there was a big LA Times story here in my hometown of LA that really launched this. But now they have this documentary, and sometimes things snowball. You got witnesses coming forward. If they all start saying the same thing, then you might say, hey, there's some truth here. And obviously, from what we all know about Bruce Willis, he is indeed suffering from these memory issues. So it's really a question of, did Randall know about it and did he take advantage of him?
Right. So, but if he was under contract, is he obligated to fulfill that responsibility, or does he kind of get not a pass, but kind of can be let go from that contract if he wasn't able to fulfill his job?
It is a pass. It's actually a defense to contract performance if it's impossible or it's impracticable. So these types of defenses exist in every contract. They don't have to be written out. So, if for some reason you and I have an agreement and I become super sick or I can't perform for some health related reason, that would allow me to get out of that contract. So obviously, if Bruce Willis is unable to physically perform, that would excuse performance in the case, even if there is a contract.
So sad. It really is. All right. Well, moving on to Teresa Giudice's husband, Louis. His business, Digital Media Solutions, is being sued for harassment. So on May 23rd, a woman named Juanita Williams filed a lawsuit on behalf of herself and others similarly situated against Choice Health Insurance and Digital Media Solutions after the company continued to call her despite being on the national do not call registry. She's seeking $1,500 per call. So his Digital Media Solutions describes itself as a leading provider of technology-enabled digital performance advertising solutions, connecting with consumers and advertisers. So is there really any merit to this lawsuit? Because I feel like I would probably sue everybody for the amount of phone calls that you get.
I know, how annoying are those robocalls and just solicitor calls. So, when it comes to these types of violations, individually, they might not be a lot, but they really do add up. So Congress has passed laws that allow people to sue and kind of get these statutory damages. Again, might not make sense with respect to one call, but if people or companies are making hundreds, sometimes thousands of phone calls, this is a way for consumers to kind of strike back and get back. So if the allegations are true, Louis and his company may be in for some financial trouble.
Really? So you think Louis may have to pay up, and this could reach into thousands and thousands of dollars if a lot of people come forward?
Potentially, yes. And there's a small group of lawyers that specifically handle these types of cases. It started years ago, well before email and phone calls, with junk fax cases. And then obviously, as people got cell phones and email, you start getting spam email and phone calls. So not something I do, but there is a small group of lawyers who handle these cases. And it's what they do, and they do it well.
Yeah, remember those junk faxes? Oh my God, way back in the day. All right, well, Nima, thank you so much as always. And everybody keep commenting, keep subscribing, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks, everyone, for watching. I'll see you next week.
For more news, content, and exclusive interviews, make sure to hit the sub, like, and bell button down below and visit usmagazine.com.